Hey guys, Kelade here. So I wanted to make sure I talk about the OP weapon that you guys might not have seen. This is something that I got in the vault in the last video, but I did not realize how OP it is, and I think a lot of people didn't. And I think it wasn't really until last week that people even started to kill the jailer just to get this weapon. And right off the front, TLDR is that if you guys have not been killing the jailer because one, your guild didn't see the need because it doesn't drop tier Ps, you definitely should. Any class that can use a strength two-hander should be killing the jailer on every difficulty that they can and trying to get this weapon. It is by far the strongest weapon in the game. And let's just get into it a little bit, right? So I think there's a couple reasons why this weapon might not have been on people's radars. Is that one, when it first got released in the journal, it didn't have this exact effect. It wasn't like, right, remove target soul to receive his final judgment and then you slay the soul. And I'll show you guys how it works in a second here. And it's a 4-minute cooldown on the on use. And so one, the item itself changed, right? So obviously the power of the weapon changed then. Two, it didn't really show up on sims well, and it wasn't simming correctly until basically the last week, right? Unless you had your own sims and, you know, your own private sims and whatever. But the public sims didn't really have this weapon simming correctly. And as you guys saw in the last video, on the sims, it increased my DPS about 6%. Which case, you know, comparatively, the 4 pieces increases my DPS by like 10%. But I actually think this weapon from the vault, I'm glad that I got it, was actually the best choice to get in my vault, because technically I only needed 1 tier piece from the vault this week, which meant, you know, I can get tier pieces from the raid on both normal and heroic. And, you know, if you're in a situation where your tier piece can also now drop from LFR or from early mythic bosses, right, additional chances to get your tier pieces there. So, but this weapon, you really want the heroic one if possible, because one, it's doable, right? Mythic, only Echo has killed Mythic Jailer so far, so they're the only guild that can actually get this in Mythic. And of course, you know, if you don't have it, I would recommend trying to get this on normal if possible too. All right, so let's go into the weapon for a second, but let's just first show you. So like the weapon, when you use it on the soul, well, let's just show you the damage, right? So like this is over a course, like a 3-minute fight, which means the weapon is about to come back up again. This rotting decay is how much damage it does. There are, I think, 5 different boons you get. The rotting decay is an okay one. There are some ones that are crazy. There's a little bit of limited information in the weapon, because to get all the boons, you first have to like get all 5 of the buffs, and they're all different. Now, it seems like 2 of the buffs do AoE, and there's a buff that stacks, which I think the one that I just showed you, the rotting decay one, actually stacks apparently. So that's one thing, and that means you can have RNG on this weapon, right? Because you could proc the AoE ability while you're doing the AoE fight, or you could proc one that does a little bit more single target on the single target fights. But regardless of what you proc, the weapon right now is so strong that it almost doesn't even matter, right? So let's just use it. So you target a guy, right? You just bind the weapon. It's like /use, whatever your weapon slots are, but I just drag the weapon onto the skill bar, right? So when you use the weapon, it's gonna send out this bolt, and it's gonna create this soul fragment, right? It's only 30 health, but you do have to target it with an ability, right? And you kill it, right? So now here is my boon of the end, right? I think this might be one of the better ones, because this is the only one. So every single one is going to give you a chance to deal damage, right? So first off, this is the AoE one that does the shadow damage to everything around me, and it's going to give me 345 strength. It is the only one of the 5 so far that I know of that, outside of just doing additional damage, that it also gives you beneficial DPS stats. The other ones either give you leech, or they give you some sort of like armor buff, right? This is the only one that I know of that gives you actually strength. And if you look at it for a second, right, just look at how much damage it does, right? Now, obviously, this is using the weapon on just for like a few seconds. But it's when you get the weapon buff for the whole minute, it procs very, very often. And it's almost even a feel-good weapon too, because you're going to most likely use it on pull, and you're going to be incredibly strong for that first 1 minute. And that's how like you can like spike up to the top of the charts, and hopefully remain there as much as you can before the fight is over. Of course, I'm also using the first sigil trinket, which, you know, combine that with my pod and using this trinket, if I bust that all out in the pool, your opening damage is actually insane. Now, of course, when the weapon goes away after a minute, right, between minutes, you know, 2 and 4 of the fight, you're not going to have secondary stats in the weapon. So your DPS is going to go down a little bit to compensate. But I would definitely say this weapon is as strong, if not even more strong, than JC's from the last raid. So you definitely want to have one of these weapons equipped if possible. So highly recommend. If you guys, your guilds are deciding whether or not to be farming for this weapon, you definitely should, because it is incredibly OP. And one, you want to make sure you guys start doing it, right? Get the loot drops, and then eventually be able to have people in your guild or in your groups trade the weapon. And I think it's just going to be OP in all settings, right? Even if it's not raiding, even in Mythic Plus, as it's just shown, I got a power that does AoE, right? And I'm sure it'll be OP in PvP too, because I think people are not going to expect the burst that's going to come from you. Though I have not tried it in PvP yet. I don't know if it works exactly. But the other thing I do want to know, if there's anybody at Blizzard watching this, one, don't nerf it because I want to be OP. But two, when you create the soul, please allow only the user of the weapon to see their own souls. Right now, our DK tank also has a weapon. Problem is, when we both use the weapon on pull, I see both souls, but you have to kill your own. Now, I do think you can kill somebody else's soul for them. But if your own soul is not killed within the time frame, I think it's like 10 seconds or something. If you don't kill the soul, it's gone. This is normally not a problem. But the problem here is we're on Halandris, and you can't go in the middle of Halandris, right? And generally when you grab the soul, it spawns next to the target, like spawns close to the middle of them, to where like you can probably just like melee next to them and you hit them. Problem on Halandris is that, you know, it's going to spawn the soul, and the only way I can kill it is with a heroic throw. So if I hit the wrong guy, because there's no indicator of which soul is mine and which one is my tank's, I have to wait 6 seconds to heroic throw it again. And this is while, you know, your opener is happening, you got your cooldown. So if there's anybody at Blizzard watching this, can you just make it so you can't either, I don't know, like just don't see each other's souls? So it's easier for you to just kill your own. Now it's really only a problem on Halandras, but it is just kind of tilting when I kill somebody else's soul and I don't get the buff and I don't have a range attack because all I have is heroic throw. But yeah, let's just try it again because it's been 4 minutes, right? Let's use it on this guy. You guys can see it's gonna throw this orb out, it's gonna hit him, then boom, there's a soul fragment. We kill it, we get a different buff here. This one we got chance to deal frost damage and absorb the damage dealt to you. And see, as you guys see, is that like you're not always gonna get the strength one. The strength one does seem kind of OP because it gives you free strength. But I don't think, yeah, even this one is kind of strong too. Looming Winter. Let's just see here, right? This is just autoing the guy, right? It's just gonna proc so many times. And that's, I think, why the buff also seems so strong, is that like when you get the buff, it's gonna consistently tick. Once you get the buff, there's not as much RNG and how much it hits because it's just literally constantly happening. So yeah, hopefully that gives you guys a bit insight into it. If you guys haven't been killing the jailer, definitely make an attempt to every single week because you definitely want this weapon. But as always, thanks for checking out the video, guys. Feel free to subscribe to see more. See ya.